Hey guys, VaulSC here, how you going? We're in 2020 now, hope you guys had a happy new year. You might have seen a lot of TTS games posted over the holidays. That's the best time of year when I'm off work to play against people in other countries, different time zones. But we are back to normal programming with your standard slideshow picture battle reports back at the club, playing people on the tabletop. And today we've got O12, the O12 faction, newest in infiNity, up against Nomads, Vanilla Nomads, a very regular opponent of mine, and just recently finished painting up the Beyond Wildfire box set. So I've got Shishkin and friends, but I've also got the group that has Cuervo Goldstein, Beta Trooper, and Omega, so a little trio there, which have recently been added to the O12 army. So I decided that for this first game back, I'm going to throw them all in a list, no matter how bad the list is with all three of them in there, and give them a go and show that result to you guys. However, I will be selling my O12 army soon. Not because O12 are really, really bad, just because they don't fit that well with my personal play style, and I've got so many other factions on the shelf which I really want to play. The O12 are really there because they were the new thing. I wanted to, put them on my YouTube channel, but really, I bought those box sets for the Shazvasti side, and I didn't swap with anybody. But yeah, having said that, I've got a massive combined army, with all the sectorials, all the Yucheng stuff, the Deshart company. I've now got foreign company as well, all the left stuff. There's just so many models for me to make lists out of, so they're a little bit superfluous. So there'll be a video coming out soon advertising them, but if you want to put in an offer before then, if you really want to buy my O12, based on the pictures you see in this bat rep, hit me up. Now, we are going to be playing on my custom mission known as Tactical Window in this bat rep. If you guys don't already know, I have some custom ITS missions. Well, they're not technically ITS missions because they're not official, but they are custom infiNity missions which can be played competitively, and they can all be accessed in PDF files on my Google Drive, so check out the video description to read them. They've all been played and place tested, and people like them. I've gotten good feedback about them, and you can play them as well. But if you don't already know this bat rep, let's just show how this works. So it's a bit similar to Supremacy. There are the 4 quadrants right through the middle of the table. And what you're generally doing is you're trying to have more of the zones controlled than your opponent. So if I've got more points worth of troops in this zone than you do, I'm in control of that zone. If I've got more points worth of guys in control of this zone as well, then great. Let's say nobody's got anything in this zone, and you've got more points than me in this zone. Well, I will have had more zones controlled than you will have, so points are gained. However, in my custom variant, it's not scored at the end of every game round, it's scored at the end of every game turn, except for the very first turn of the game, and except for the 6th final turn of the game. What that means is that if you're taking the first turn, you can't just walk out there and have more people in the zone straight away. And also, if you're taking the last turn of the game, you can't just sweep into the areas of the zone and leave your guys out there unpunished and also score. There's no scoring in that last turn. And what that means is that you are ending up playing a game of infiNity where just about every turn matters. There's a beginning, middle, and end of the game. You have to make decisions about how much to commit. Leaving troops out in the middle of the map can be useful because they're there for future rounds where scoring is continuous, and a lot of people have found that they like that more than the end of game round scoring. I certainly like it. On top of that, there are some consoles, so depending on table side, you have 2 consoles to go for. So the player who's going first, if they are on this side here, they'll be trying to capture this objective with a specialist and this one over here, and they're worth 2 objective points each. However, your opponent can't capture them back off you, so you've got the entire game to achieve them. It's not about having the last gasp, last game round to just grab them back off your opponent. You've just got to commit to them, which means that you're doing a bit of work capturing objectives and a bit of work killing enemy troopers and a bit of work holding zones. So it's quite a varied experience where you need a bit of a balanced list. The opponent will therefore go for the other objectives, on the opposite sides, which is cool. On top of that, you get +1 point for getting more army kills at the end, and another +1 point for a single classified objective or securing their HVT, just like many other scenarios, just to round that out. So that's proved to be pretty cool. Anyway, back to this list. So, I am deliberately going to run a list that has all three of the Operation Wildfire, Beyond Wildfire pack in it. There's Cuervo Goldstein, there's the Beta Trooper, and the Omega Trooper. Now, these are all expensive models, around about 40 points each. I wouldn't normally recommend putting them all in the same list. It's usually better to focus on one or two because they're quite order-hungry models that need a lot of resources to use, and if you're spreading them around that trio, it's not really that great. But just a casual fun game. I wanted to see them in actions, especially since I may be offloading the army soon to a lucky person. But let's just see how it goes. Anyway, the commentary. Cuervo Goldstein. I find that, like most expensive drop troopers, investing too much into a drop trooper often isn't worth it because they aren't that reliable, especially over a tournament that might go for 5 rounds. If you need them to perform every game, you may be disappointed if they try to drop in and scatter, or if they come on the side of the table and just get hit by an hidden deployment missile launcher or whatever it might be. It can get pretty scary. In Cuervo's case, he's got NWI and shock immunity, so effectively 2 wounds. But if you're dropping into enemy territory, you're not really likely to last more than an order or 2 anyway. So I find it can be better to go for your fire and forget Delta Trooper boarding shotgun, especially since that profile has the Panzerfaust for a lot cheaper. Thing is, though, he does have the MA4 CC23 monofilament sword combination, which is pretty lethal if you're able to drop next to something, take a hit, survive that hit because of NWI, and then walk into close combat and kill it. Your opponent can easily find themselves losing a lieutenant or a tag or a crucial member of a link team or whatever it may be because his ability to assassinate is very, very high. With shooting, it's nice that he's got Ballistical 13. For some reason thought I had mimetism on him. I hope I wasn't telling my opponent he had mimetism during the game, but then again I am pretty unfamiliar with him. And also the Beta Trooper, which we're about to talk about, has mimetism, so there is that as well. Overall though, Cuervo, I'm not a huge fan of the model. In terms of the rules, it's just such a steep price to pay for a guy like this. When you're just landing something and getting a hit off with it, usually it's better to spend fewer points and try to trade up. If this guy lands and the only thing he's able to kill is like a 10-20 point model, it definitely wasn't worth it. And you're going to have some opponents that have heaps of camo markers, heaps of crazy koalas and mines and things like that, and you can't find a place to drop him, or the place he ends up dropping in, they happen to have a jammer that was in camo status nearby and that gets him. There's just a lot of really pitfalls for this guy, unfortunately. Between the BSG and the submachine gun, running the submachine gun just because it's cheaper and I'm really scraping for points in this list. Both are good. I quite like the Arclight Canon in the submachine gun platform just because if he does fail his drop and ends up closer to your deployment zone, at least he's got a longer range weapon that is quite an impactful weapon to use. If he's AOing, if that's all you can do with him. But man, it's just such a disaster if you can't really get the points worth out of this guy. And against a good opponent, you're going to be working quite hard to get him into position. Beta Trooper, I find this trooper quite fascinating. He's like a miniature version of the Sujian, a little bit less resilient, but a lot cheaper. And he's got mimetism along with his, his armor and climbing plus and ballistic skill, and hyperdynamics for dodging. So he's actually a bit more slippery than the Yasujian, a bit easier to get away. The real benefit, I think, of the Beta Trooper, and the thing that makes me most interested in him, is that this faction overall, if it has a weakness, and I do think it does have a weakness, is that there are too few options for really getting to grips with an opponent that's hiding troopers and trying to stay away from you and keeping you at arm's length. Other factions have some really good ways of sort of sending in cheaper troopers to trade with you and stuff that's very good at attacking. O12 lacks that a little bit, and this may be one candidate for fulfilling that role. Moving over the other side of the table, finding enemy troopers, surviving the occasional hit, and really making that strike actually stick and actually get some work done. So his capability of shooting, kind of, if you compare him to the Sirius squad, who I used to use a lot, they're also pretty good ballistical and mimetism, but they're a bit flimsy. As soon as you take a hit to the Team Sirius guy, that's it for both him and the bot. Whereas the Beta Trooper, Armor 3 rather than 2, also has BTS 3, Mimetism can be really good, and if you do need to dodge the occasional mine or Crazy Koala, the Hyperdynamics really helps. And he's not a remote, he's just a heavy infantry with structure points, so that's really awesome. The Climbing +2 can help him survive at the end of the turn by going up on top of a building and going prone. 6.2 speed may look like it's not much of an improvement over 4.4, but if it's your primary moving and attacking piece, remember you're moving on top of a building and shooting, or moving around a corner and shooting, and having 6.2 is really good there if you're just moving, shooting, right? Compared to moving 4 and shooting. So that's why he can actually be a really good midfield presence. Spitfire being my favorite profile because if you're doing that kind of role, you need as much dice as possible. But I do also find the specialist options attractive because you could press a button or two while you're out there and then continue your run to get some kills. A mission like Supremacy or whatever it may be, Power Pack, something that has buttons in the middle. You move out, hit the buttons, hit the panoplies. And speaking of panoplies, on missions where specialists get a bonus, that would be pretty cool if your primary attack piece gets some buffs while you're out there as well. Omega, pretty boring, plain, but sometimes that's what you need. Every faction needs a solid HMG to gun down the annoying flash pulses and snipers and things that are just watching the table. If you don't have something that can do that reliably, your opponent can keep you at bay too easily and shut your plans down too easily and stop you from scoring too easily. This guy tends to be that sort of solution. Standing up, ODD, BS-14, HMG can survive a hit or two. Unfortunately, the multi-rifle profiles, although they're really cool, love the riot stoppers, love the fact that he's got a Fort Observer profile. This is the kind of model whose job it is just to shoot things at long range. If you're playing the multi-rifle version, although the extra bells and whistles can look attractive, he's got to get up out of cover and move over there, and the extra orders spent can be a bit too much hassle. You're kind of starved for orders as it is a lot in this faction, and once it gets out in the midfield, he may be vulnerable to a lot of short-range things that he can't really stave off very well. So I'd be very careful about running the other profiles. The HMG is usually where it's at. The thing is, though, this is a faction that has a bunch of other HMG profiles, so you could take the Gamma, or you could take the Dakini with assisted fire, or the Upsilon with smoke going on them as well. So, yeah, I really feel like this faction needs more options in the other roles rather than completely saturating that one, burst anti-aero kind of gun turret, really, with 4 really strong options. It's, probably more than 4 if you count the tag and some of the other stuff too. But time will tell, the faction may change after a while. So backing up the trio, we've got the Gangbuster Killer Hacker, pretty solid. 3 Varangians in the first group, plus an extra Varangian with a different loadout in the second group with a double chain cult. Running Catherine Cho, quite like her because she doesn't cost any SWCs and I need them elsewhere, otherwise it would be a Kappa Lieutenant. The cool thing about Catherine is with a Holoprojector level 1, you can sort of fool your opponent about where the SWCs are sometimes, especially if you're taking like a Lynx sniper. So if you pretend that she's actually like an Upsilon HMG hiding behind cover or something, that can throw your opponent off. Other than that, though, there aren't actually too many options that you can really sell to your opponent. I thought about making her a Hippolyta, but I think that you have to actually tell your opponent that you're choosing not to use the Impetuous rule at the start of the turn, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that would give away that you're actually using Holoprojector level 1 if you're just saying to your opponent, well, this model actually doesn't even have Impetuous, therefore you know it's actually Cho. Anyway, nice cheap cheerleader option who can be your lieutenant without having to fork out the extra points for the alpha. If you can afford the alpha, of course, the Straticos and counterintelligence definitely worth it. But if you absolutely must save the points, Cho, very strong options and a big improvement over the Kappa lieutenant option, in my opinion. Cheerleader bots, Upsilon HMG, just because you're going to have so much smoke around, it's usually worth taking one. Lambda to revive either the Upsilon or the Omega, which is nice. Kappa Hacker to put down assisted jump for Goldstein, and I had enough points for another flash bot at the back, Fuzz bot, so I've got a robust group 2 that can really fuel these things going on, especially with the Varangian being able to move out with group 2's orders. I don't have a copy of the Nomads list. A lot of it didn't get revealed during game, but we're going to be up against a Gecko, Moira HMG, the Puppet Tactica, sorry, team with the 3 little puppet bots, Zonnaut, Spitfire, that general kind of thing. So let's get to it. Tactical window. Note, by the way, guys, that although I invented this scenario a number of years ago, Corvus Belli decided to lift the name for their new ITS modification, where you're only allowed to take 15 orders. So don't get the two confused. There's one custom mission from VaulSC and a format by the same name from Corvus Belli, who probably took that idea. That's okay. They're welcome to it. Here's a view of the table from my opponent's deployment zone. So that's where he's sitting up, and my deployment zone will be from this side. Got the nice building on the right-hand side here. And let's have a look at deployment now. So left-hand side of my deployment, I'll have Ranging Group 1, Kappa Hacker, and a Flash Bot, and then there's going to be the Mad Traps represented by these mines. Because I'm taking first turn, I did manage to win the Lieutenant role and go for first. I've got a Gangbuster around here who'll be going for this objective and this objective off in the distance, and hopefully collecting them relatively soon in the game, because at 2 points each they are quite significant. So there's the Gangbuster with his 2 Mad Traps just hanging out right in front of this thing. Although I'll hopefully be spending a lot of orders on Cuervo in the first turn, I'm going to need to spend some of them on this guy to grab this and go into cover. Catherine Cho is using Holo Projector level 1 to pretend that she is Wild Bill. That is my Holo Projector choice, and that's going to be Wild Bill as a proxy there, defended by a Varangian, so making it look as though, I'm just sort of defending that, although I think it's pretty obvious who my Lieutenant is, given all the other profiles. And the right-hand side here, don't want to search, grab this, so Flash Bot on the extreme right-hand side, of course, always scanning for any potential drop troopers that may come down. HVT on the extreme right-hand side. On top of the building, we've got the Beta Trooper, who's able to use Climb Plus to climb down here and then go on top of this building, which will allow him to use the Spitfire a bit closer to the enemy territory. This Varangian Guard's represented by my newly painted Valkyrie, starting on my foreign stuff, so that's Valkyrie there. She's the Group 2 Varangian that has the double chain colts. Another Varangian here. There's an Omega on the stairs. We'll get to him later. A Lambda up top here as well. And we're probably going to be putting the Upsilon HMG as a reserve trooper along that little area. So a closer look. Beta Trooper, Lambda, and Omega. And there's another glamour shot of our Beta friend with Spitfire ready to go. Another close-up of our Omega Trooper. While it's there, he's actually standing up as well, so even if I don't spend any orders on him, he's going to be able to provide the AROs. Generally pretty safe ARO option, given his armor, ballistic skill, ODD, and cover with a doctor nearby. My opponent, looking at his left-hand flank on the other side, Flash Bot here, Moira HMG up here, standard Alguacile, which could be a Lieutenant, might not be. One of the puppet bots over here, this one I think has, it's not the boarding shotgun or the Mark 12, it's the other one, can't remember what the other profile is. Over here, this side, he initially took a photo with Billy, like Jazz and Billy, with this guy up top, but then he had to remove him because he realized that the silhouette one's just slightly higher than this wall, so he brought him down here. But you've got the Mark 12 bot, no, I actually think this is the Mark 12 bot, and this is the boarding shotgun bot. They're just hanging out behind this building, waiting for their turn. So there they are with the redeployment on this side. Looking at the right-hand side, we've got Jaguar, we've got another Alguacile, we've got another Jaguar in the distance. There's a Puppet Master, of course, controlling this group, who's a mine layer with a mine next to this doorway. Crack-Out Renegade further afield, so let's just go through what's there. So that was the Alguacile there, Jaguar, another Jaguar, Flash Bot, that is the Puppet Master, and here is his mine, because he is a mine layer. Crack-Out Renegade out midfield, I believe rolling up +3 Fizz and Regen, very nice roll. And towards the right-hand side here, he's got Jazz herself with the Zon bike, Spitfire, and then there's a 0, I believe it's a 0 anyway, with Mine Layer for a mine out in the right-hand flank to protect that area too. So he'll be going for the blue console-like objectives. I'll be going for the green column ones. Bit of a glamour shot here of our beautiful Zonnaut. And a zoom out, just showing his HVT as well next to this car. Okay, my reserve trooper is the wonderful Upsilon sniper, not sniper, it's the HMG version with the doctor nearby to help out. So I've got my 3 heavy-duty people on this building, which I'm fine with because they're going to spread out, plus it's also a good vantage point, and sometimes it's not a bad idea to stack up arrows if you feel your opponent doesn't have the best tools to deal with you. I do note that my opponent, although he's got a Moira HMG, the Moira HMG might suffer a little bit against the Upsilon because the Upsilon's got mimetism and ignores the Moira's ODD. So even though it's 4 dice versus 1, it's unlikely for him to do like more than 1 wound, so I should be able to revive the Upsilon. And against the Omega, it's basically ODD versus ODD, but my guy's Ballistic Skill 14 has the armor and cover and is unlikely to lose, 3 wounds and 1 volley, so I feel like I can hold him up a little bit. The Mark 12 Gecko showing up at the back, reserve trooper for Nomads. Nice little paint job there, just waiting for his turn in the action, and then we're underway. 2 orders stripped out of Group 1, and that's what it's going to look like. So there's an order missing because Cuervo is flying high above the battlefield. 2 stripped away from the command token my opponent spent, and then 5 of them in Group 2. Alright, so looking at the table, I decided to drop Cuervo right next to the Moira. And you can see why I want to do this, right? The only thing that can see him if he lands right there in the corner is the Moira herself. And if the Moira dodges around the corner, well, that's fine. He can drop prone and then just pick around the corner and shoot her with the SMG. If she shoots at him with either the HMG or the pistol, well, she can only do a maximum of 1 wound to him, and then he can go prone, come into base contact, and kill her with martial arts. And if they're both prone, this model here is not going to be able to see over it. So just landing him through here should be okay. I put down assisted jump first, like controlled jump first, so I think he's landing on, what is it, a 13 plus 3, 16, so 80% chance of landing. And yeah, I'm happy to take the hit because if Cuervo takes out the Moira or even trades for her, he will have no HMGs and no other stuff really that can take on my arrows. Imagine trying to deal with the Omega or the Upsilon or even the Beta Trooper just by using your puppet bots or the Gecko. They're not going to do well against that mimetism and ODD and stuff like that and the superior ballistic skill. So this is Cuervo's job. And if he fails to scatter, well, then I'm going to have to move out with other things. Now, we roll the dice. Jazz attempts attack, hack transport, and fails at -6. Cuervo rolls the dice, instantly rolls a 20, and scatters off the table. Which was frustrating, because this may be the only game where I ever use Cuervo, and I kind of wanted to demonstrate him and get him in the action and show you what he can do and like have a bit of fun there. I think this goes to show that I don't, stage my bat reps. I don't make stuff up. Sometimes I think that maybe I should. Maybe I just pose the models and pretend that this happens and don't actually roll the dice. But the thing about infiNity, which often makes infiNity a fun game to play, is you get a lot of unusual, unexpected situations, and you've got to make the best of them, and that's really where the fun lies. So this doesn't actually happen. Cuervo scatters off the table, never to be seen again. He's actually over the side here, and what we're going to be doing this turn is we're going to be moving him further up onto this building. Note that later in the game, he's also going to be useful for putting his points into the zones and potentially moving... Oh, move my camera off table. Potentially moving over to this building where the Moira actually is later and maybe getting the Moira later in the game. But his points are still going to be useful. He's still got the Arclight Canon to actually cover a bit of an area here if I so choose to set him up that way. But yeah, just a bit frustrating that he failed that landing. Alright, so spending coordinated orders to reposition guys, moving the Omega up in the building, moving Cuervo out here, also repositioning of Ranging Guard on the other side of the table with all of these coordinateds, and Beta Trooper also moving out into the midfield as well. So about 3 coordinated orders spent total. Beta Trooper completely repositioning to the midfield. When he comes out here, again, you've got 2 wounds, armor 3, cover. He's got range with the Spitfire to position where the Moira is going to appear. And most likely where the Gecko and Puppet Bots are going to appear on either side of this building. So by situating this guy out here, he's going to actually help control this midfield and make it more difficult for my opponent to move out and start grabbing zones once we reach the second turn and onwards where scoring is going to matter. So that's how I'm going to play him. The Killer Hacker Gangbuster now activates, attempts to press the button on the console, fails the first whip check, fails the second whip check, fails the third whip check, and I'm sort of, pulling my hair out at this point. The O12 dice that came with the Wildfire set, I've been having real trouble with them, by the way. I'm not making that up. Like, I've played them for a few games, and I always end up throwing them out, getting my normal dice out, and finding that I'm fine. Might just be superstition, but that's what I've experienced. That's what the data shows. Anyway, after 4 failed attempts, he finally gets it done, and my turn's basically over by then, and I'm putting him into cover, moving the mad traps out of the way. But I haven't killed anything. I've moved a couple of models up and gained a better position, but that's it. First turn, basically wasted. So, very frustrating. Oh, also moving in the group 2, my second Varangian Guard up to this other console here. This is the important console my opponent will be going for later, so I want to be able to get into position to defend it with the Varangian Guard at some point. And also, as you can see, we've got the Omega up in this corner of the building, covering a large area of the battlefield. He's going to come in handy. Okay, everybody's getting set up here. Omega, we're also standing up with the HMG, so expecting to take some shots from the Moira, but we're just going to try and handle it. And we've even got the Varangian Guard in suppression fire with an SMG behind the console. So yeah, some pretty big models standing up in the middle of the table. I'm really just trying to do damage in my opponent's turn, but that's sometimes how games of infiNity work. You just end up doing more damage when it's your opponent's turn than your turn, ironically. So my opponent is looking like this. He's got 8 orders group 1, 6 orders group 2 with an irregular order, even though he's got no drop troopers or hidden deployment. And the reason being is that he's actually using some of the slots in group 1 for the puppet bots and wants them to be in that group. So first time I think that he's using that sort of setup, but we'll see how it goes for him. And here we go. So we've got Impetuous with his bike, moving out initially, firing a smoke grenade from the smoke launcher further afield. We find that it lands over here, nearby to the position of the Krakot and HVT. Note that my Gangbuster Killer Pet Hacker is over here with a Mad Trap. It's going to have like a bit of a zone here where the actual radius zone of control of the Mad Traps actually are. But the smoke goes down successfully. We're then moving out with the Krakot, I think it is. Just checking range now to... yeah, so actually what's happening, excuse me. The Krakot is here. What he's doing is he's actually throwing a grenade with spec fire. This is the Krakot profile, which has 2 chain rifles and grenades. I really don't like the profile because chest mines and some sort of range gun are better with a Krakot, but he's decided to go for it and is actually spec firing at long range. He has rolled +3, so +3 physical, that helps, but it doesn't help that he's -3 for range and -6 for spec fire, so it's an overall -6. If you're starting at Phys 13, you're going down to 7s to hit, I believe. He initially rolls a hit, but although I was very unlucky in my first turn, I started to get lucky in my second turn by passing an armor save on the Mad Trap and the Gangbuster, so feeling good about that at least. Over here, we are now going to be attacking with various people. So Moira moves around. She's going for basically the edge of this crate to start shooting at the Beta Trooper. Now, Beta Trooper can simply dodge because he's got hyperdynamics, so a really useful rule for exactly this kind of situation. And it can allow him to dodge a bit closer towards the side of the wall, reposition a little bit. So Beta Trooper, if we look back at his stats, he's Phys 12 goes up to 15s to survive. And the Moira's having to shoot +3, -3, but -3 again for mimetism. So what's that, 10s on 4 dice versus 15 on 1 dice. And if the Beta Trooper can start blocking those shots, it's going to eat into his orders. And he's already lost a couple of orders because of the slots being used for the puppet bots. So again, very unlucky in my first turn, Cuervo scattering off the board, and my Gangbuster failing 4 willpower checks in a row, whatever it was. I now start getting lucky by passing saves with my Beta Trooper, passing dodge checks, winning face-to-face rolls, and he ends up spending several orders with the Moira, not getting anything done, essentially, or at least reducing my Beta Trooper to 1 wound by the end of it, but he keeps dodging around and repositioning and getting it further up the wall. My opponent ends up getting frustrated over here and moves the Moira to the other side of the crate, so no longer firing at this Beta Trooper, who has survived, by the way, instead firing at my Upsilon HMG. Of course, Cuervo is on this building prone, Nomads there, and the Varangian's prone behind this object here. So there's Cuervo, by the way. So firing back with my Upsilon HMG, and continuing to get lucky in my defensive turn, hitting him and winning the face-to-face roll with the HMG, although fortunately for my opponent he does pass the Moira's armor save, but frustratingly still just hasn't killed anything with that Moira HMG at all. Pretty crazy. Note that if this Upsilon does take some damage, he's going to simply get revived by the Doctor unless he's completely removed. We even have my opponent moving out with the Gecko, desperately trying to get some work done. He doesn't want to come fully around the corner because he's going to get shot by several things if that happens. But going forward against the Beta Trooper, the Gecko does get a hit in on the Beta Trooper, which forces him to go prone after I take a wound there. So that works out, but he's just really running out of orders at this point. Also, Gecko coming around the other side and just holding this little angle, but really can't do much more than that because the range is too long. If he goes up against the Upsilon, even though he's got the advantage in terms of burst, in terms of dice, we're talking long range, talking cover, talking mimetism, and he's like just Blistical 13, so even with 4 dice, it's not going to be worth going up against the Upsilon. I think he tried it over 1 order and it didn't really work, so back to where his home lies behind the building. On the other side of the table, the bike roaring into action, moving out into this smoke cloud that it has generated. The Gangbuster is still there, so we are now transforming into the robot. The robot's able to move out. For some reason, although it's it's a bike, it's not classified as a remote as far as we can tell from Army 6. Might be mistaken about that, but that's what we had a look at. So able to dodge the Mad Trap, luckily. That happens. Then he starts moving around to attack the Gangbuster. Problem with this, though, is that the bike has a chain rifle, but no pistol or anything like that. So because I know this, he moves into line of sight of the Gangbuster. Gangbuster simply declares a dodge, knowing that he's just going to be up against a chain rifle. And, of course, the chain rifle does come at him, and he's got the opportunity to either pass the dodge check or the armor save, and so long as he does one of those two things, he won't die, giving him actually quite a high chance of surviving each order spent, and that's exactly what happens. My opponent, doing that over 2 or 3 orders, just getting nothing done in this particular turn. So I think that's more of a either a sign of lack of experience or just a mistake from my opponent there trying to achieve that. Really, you need to be doing other things if you don't have the ability. I mean, even going to close combat with him or finding something else that can shoot at him is a better approach to take than this, sadly. So Bike has to return back to the safety of the smoke cloud, having achieved very little. And that's it. So we had an extremely ineffectual turn 1 from Nomads to basically follow up from an extremely ineffectual turn 1 from O12. But turn 2 is where the game gets really interesting. Note that the quadrants are scored per player turn, not game round. So we immediately have a round of scoring that occurs. And my opponent, because he's just got such a small amount done during that turn, even though it was his active turn, he wasn't able to end the turn in control of the zones. And because Cuervo is out in the middle for me, closest to my deployment zone, and on the other side you've got the Varangian Guard, which had moved out, I'm in control of the 2 quadrants closest to my deployment zone. He had the one on his side with the bike, but on the Moira side of the table, nothing was able to actually venture out here because it was, continuously getting shot by the Upsilon and the Beta Trooper. So even in his active turn, I've now gone up 1 objective point, which is really going to help me get a lead in this game. I'm now 3-0 ahead because I've got the console, so feeling good about that. Varangian Guard moving out impetuously to start the turn off, throwing a smoke grenade down in front of the Upsilon. The Upsilon starts here within line of sight of his tag, which shot at me previous turn. So I'm moving down the stairs into smoke, so if I do any follow-up orders, I'm going to be able to shoot through the smoke. But initially, we attack him from beyond there. He, I think, fires a blitzen at me and misses. I ripped a wound out of him, I believe, structure point, so he now guts back behind the building, and Upsilon is just hanging out here. So that's initially Group 1, but it forces the Gecko out from partial cover back into total cover. The Beta Trooper, making use of his wonderful climbing plus ability, now springs into action. He's got plenty of orders to use because we're starting the turn with a full, group of 10. So climbs down from the building, moves towards enemy lines, and is going to be picking things off wherever he can find them. The first thing that he needs to deal with is this puppet bot here. So he's going to be shooting along this angle, and it'll be good to kill this puppet bot because after that, the group of puppet bots will no longer get the burst 1 bonus because one of them will be down. So fortunately, with the help of Mimetism and burst 4 Spitfire, he does rip into this bot with a whole bunch of shots and actually takes him down to unconscious straight away, which I was really happy about because that's very efficient and we can continue towards enemy lines. Next up, moving around here to get line of sight to the Krakot. So I've destroyed this model up top, which was otherwise going to shoot me. We're now firing our Spitfire at this Krakot model, who has regeneration, but the Krakot can't do very much. He's actually facing the wrong way anyway. My opponent actually told me he's supposed to be facing this way. So ripping into him, doing so much damage to him that he's just straight to dead, not even unconscious. So there's one Krakot down. Note that this Bike Trooper is facing the wrong way also, but does get a change face as a result of his friend dying nearby. So what we're now going to do after we've committed that damage is push into this spot here. I decided I want to sacrifice the Beta Trooper at this point because after getting this many kills, it's going to be hard to follow that up with many more kills that aren't going to be punished. So killing the bike's going to be a priority. That's a big piece to take care of, but it's going to force me to move past the line of sight of this Puppet Tactica bot with boarding shotgun, so I'm going to take a hit as I come through this little section. But that's fine, I'm willing to take that. So Beta Trooper moves through, shoots at this Spitfire Zont Nordica dude and kills him, so that's a bit of a win there. But continuing my trend of suddenly getting lucky in this part of the game, the Beta Trooper actually survives the boarding shotgun and a flash pulse, I think. So we end up okay, which means that I can then move around and get even more kills by coming up on top of this box and firing at other things. But finally the luck runs out, everything shoots back at the Beta Trooper, and he ends up dying. By the way, the reason why the Beta Trooper has gone on top of this box is that would have given him line of sight to the Moira HMG, who's standing up over here. So with the box being here, goes up on top of that, gains some elevation, he's able to fire at the position of the Moira on this white building, if you guys can picture that. So that's what I attempted to do, 4 dice versus 1, but although I've experienced some very good luck this turn, it runs out, the Beta Trooper takes another wound and doesn't win the face-to-face roll. So there you go. What I can now do is move out with the Gangbuster because the coast is clear and the Gangbuster survived, I think, 2 attempts at speculative shots from grenades from the Krakot and lived, as well as all of those chain rifle attempts. He's now angry. He's heading over to enemy lines and he's going to go over and press that button on the other side of the table, which is going to yield another 2 objective points. So I'm going to have, a 4-0 lead on objective points there until my opponent takes his 2. And I'm going to have a point from the second turn of the game and now the third turn of the game as well, giving me a lead of 6 objective points to 0. So my opponent's got a lot of work to do to come back. Having said that, it's still possible for him to win because he can get 4 points from his objectives. He can get another couple for game rounds. He can get another couple from army points and classified. So not out of this by any means. But the Gangbuster is set up there successfully. We're also repositioning the Omega a little bit just to find better angles to different parts of the battlefield. So feeling good. We're also repositioning the Upsilon, moving around here to get a shot off at the tag in the distance, firing away at him, and I believe continuing to cause damage to him but not kill him. And we're just ending up here to end the turn. Sorry, I meant up at the top of this thing here. Behind this specific wall is where he ended up getting to, and the tag has now run away. Okay, so my opponent not feeling great after those last 2 turns, namely his first turn and my second turn. Have gone pretty badly for him. Looking at the board, realizing that he needs to get some points on the board to try and catch up. So we're now moving out with Jazz, who's moving over to this objective here to start working on it. We're also moving out with the puppet bots, heading towards this Gangbuster here, who's sticking out behind the objective. This is the multi-rifle, sorry, the marksman puppet bot, who starts firing at the Gangbuster, and despite the mimetism on the Gangbuster, he does, I think, get a crit and kills him. And then Jazz moves up to secure this objective, so picking up 2 objective points, now 6-2 in favor of O12 rather than 6-0, so that's looking okay. Moving out with Jaguars and things, he's basically trying to get into a spot where he can retake the quadrants nearest to his deployment zone and potentially push out into one of mine as well to get points back on the board. Okay, so to do that, having to move Jazz around here, through to the middle of the table, shooting at my ranging guard with the SMG, actually, from Jazz. This is the one time where you wish you actually did have the combi rifle rather than upgrading your Alguacil hacker to be Jazz, although 100% of the time it's better to have Jazz. But attempting to go after the ranging guard doesn't quite work. The smoke goes down from the ranging guard, but importantly, this model is now in my territory in this half of the table, so he will be able to score another point at the end of the turn. So there she is, just pulling back a little bit behind this wall, and this ranging guard able to throw the smoke down, and life goes on. Over here, the Mad Trap has been disabled because the Gangbuster has been killed, so the puppet bots continue to move out. Because they're so low to the ground, the Omega can't quite get line of sight to them over the building walls. And they're now going to start homing in on this objective here and finding spots to get to people. Initially, he was going to come around this way with this spot. He's now going to come around the other way, and we'll see what happens with that. So, looking over top here, this spot attempting to go after the Omega with its Mark 12. Not successfully, though. The Omega just too good for him, and continues to bash him up with the HMG, I believe. So, not successful. It's quite hard to beat a guy that has ODD. However, the other bot, who is a forward observer, is able to walk around here. Valkyrie is prone behind this objective, which counts as a silhouette 3. So with the bot being able to come through here just quite sneakily, turns out, and I didn't realize this, turns out to be a specialist, is able to press the other button. So within the space of a single turn, my opponent has picked up his 2 objectives, so he's gone up 4-4 on the objectives game. And at the end of this turn, will actually have more points and more zones than me, so gets an additional point for quadrants. So the score is more like 6-5 at the end of this, which is really interesting, isn't it? Very strong comeback turn from Nomads in terms of points on the board, and that's what matters, in competitive play. So there you go. However, that is the end of the turn, and when it comes back to me, we've got the ranging guard, which can just walk over and bash this puppet bot in close combat. Not very successfully, not actually quite killing him, but that's what happens. We also have the ranging guard over this side, moving out impetuously, shooting at Jazz, who does a fine job of fending him off with her submachine gun, surprisingly. So the other one moves out to try and shoot at her, and I can't remember if he even manages that either. I think it takes the Kappa, yeah. I have to use the Kappa hacker to go after her, because neither of the ranging guards actually managed to beat her, amazingly. But the Kappa, given cover, given extra dice, given extra ballistic skill, the Kappa does remove Jazz finally from this quadrant. And I'm having to spend orders from Group 2 to move that model out into the field. This is going to be the last turn for scoring in terms of the quadrant, so I have to get something into this particular quadrant nearby to my deployment zone. Alright. I'm absolutely determined to use Cuervo, even if it costs me the game. It's just a casual game, not a tournament game. Cuervo would probably be best left alone, and for me to move out with the Alpha or something like that, not the Alpha, the Omega. But I'm just so dead keen to use him. So moving over here initially, coming into close combat to wipe out this puppet bot. Very easy, because with Martial Arts level 4 he's going up to 3 dice with a helper in close combat, and the monofilament weapon easily enough to remove this little troop. And that will mean that this ranging guard is in control of the zone, and Cuervo can be used to move elsewhere. I also stood up with the Lambda, firing the medikit at the Upsilon and trying to revive him. This often turns out to be the kind of thing that results in failure, but surprisingly today it worked. The Lambda does tag the Upsilon with her medikit, and he does pass the physics check to get revived, which is important because I need to also have more kills, more points on the board my opponent at the end. Otherwise, I give up a point on that front as well. So Upsilon coming back is a big deal. Lambda does have enough orders to go back prone behind cover. We're then moving Cuervo out, and what I'd love to be able to do is move him over to the corner here, climb up on top of the thing, get to the point where he was trying to land at the start of the turn, start of the game, kill the Moira, and end up in control of this zone on this side of the table, giving me hopefully more army points killed at the end and more quadrants to finish things off. So that's what we're attempting to do. Moving out over here, there is a Jaguar in the distance, but Cuervo firing at the Jaguar with a submachine gun, trying to pick him off long range before moving to this spot. I must say, the safest thing to do here, and the wiser thing to do if this is a tournament, and I did go over this with my opponent during game, is to simply do nothing, leave Cuervo there, and let him have his final turn, because if we do it that way, I go up to 7 objective points, he stays on 5, there's no scoring for the quadrants in the last game turn, and the only way that he could come back would be to get a draw by killing more stuff and getting 1 classified, and that would be the end of it. So the safest thing by far is to actually do nothing here beyond this, but I just couldn't help myself. I absolutely had to go for a move here with Cuervo as he comes up to the side and climbs up to go after the Moira. And the thinking here is that if he manages to survive, that'll be great. And I really wanted to get him doing some more action. The problem is, though, he does have a tag. It's used 1 Blitzen, but still has a Blitzen left to actually go after him. And the Moira herself can actually fire her pistol or HMG at close range. My opponent made a bit of a mistake here by using the Mark 12 from the tag rather than the Blitzen. Blitzen would have been way better because even if he doesn't get the pistol through, the Blitzen's going to stop Cuervo from spinning anything else and shut him down. But he did go for the Mark 12 anyway, did go for the pistol, and only gets a single wound through, which is great for Cuervo because he can then guts prone and has NWI. So in the final order for him, he can simply, so there's the tag there shooting at him from that angle, he can then move into close combat. He's got martial arts level 4, easily enough to swipe the Moira in close combat, but unbelievably, I can't believe I'm even saying this, guys, Cuervo whiffs them by rolling like a 1 and a 3. The Moira wins the face-to-face roll in close combat and kills him. So, yeah, Cuervo, how about that guy? Fails his jump attempt, needing a 16, and walks across the board to the Moira and still can't even kill her in close combat. As if the guy's profile wasn't bad enough, I've also had some really terrible luck with him this game, and this might be the only game I use him. So I don't know what to tell you. That's pretty much it. 0-12 have ended the turn there. And hilariously, my opponent, seeing an opportunity here, moves out with his Jaguar, starts throwing smoke. He's able to move his Clockmaker across here, goes to revive one of his puppet bots, and completes the test run classified. And because Cuervo has actually died, my opponent's killed more points than me and ends up winning the game 7-6. So there you go. Nomads pull it back, get the win. Well deserved. I can't feel salty about this kind of loss because when you're sort of playing a bit of a meme list and you're sort of making decisions during the game for the sake of the cinema of the game, you can't sort of be arrogant about it and expect to win lots of games anyway. infiNity's pretty cutthroat. If your opponent's trying their best to win, they probably ought to win if you're deliberately doing some things which are dumb. So, lesson learned. 0-12, I won't be playing them for too much longer. Please get in touch if you would like to put in an offer to purchase the models that you've seen on the tabletop today. I will also include, obviously, the Gamma and the Sirius team. Just everything that you get from Operation Wildfire, minus the Shazvasti, and not Hippolyta. I'm keeping her for a left. And the Wildfire, Beyond Wildfire trio as well. If you would like to purchase them off me, I will sell them to you and post them to you. 0-12, cool faction, but I have so many other factions to play, so I'll be sticking to them. Alrighty, well that's the first live action, not live action, slideshow photos bat rep of 2020. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned because this weekend I will be doing a strategy sectorial review for Steel Phalanx, I'm hoping. So stay out for that one, and I'll see you there.